Folks, we move on from the AFC to the NFC with a guest who has not been on here in a long time. It was supposed to be Matt, Jared, and I, but stuff has happened. Also, Matt dropped out. But Matt's to my right now. Matt Beast, Matt Dad's who. So it's been a while since you've been on here. How have you been?
Yeah, it's been a minute. I've been all right. Just been making moves in life, I guess you could say. But we're here today to talk about some football. It's about to start up. It's that time of year where I have to start up my YouTube TV subscription again. So it's that wonderful time of the year.
Yeah, that's the thing with me. Like, I want to go on that for a section because I've seen like what the prices are for Sunday Ticket on that and like everything else. How it's like $600-700 for us Canadians. For that, we have a streaming service called DAZN. DAZN is how you spell it. $20 a month. I get every game. I get Red Zone. Plus, there's other stuff on there, too. There's, like, some random boxing fights. Champions League Soccer was on there at one point. But for football, like, I get, like, no matter who's playing, I can go on there and watch the game. So it's, like, when I look at that, I'm just like, oh, cool. But then that's how I get access to Red Zone, too. So it's just, like, the best of both worlds. So, like, when I see all that stuff for, like, the games on Prime or Peacock, I'm just like, I never have to worry about that once in my life. Where it's weird. I feel like it's easier to watch football north of the border as opposed to south of the border.
$20 a month.
Yep.
In this economy?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, man. I mean, I don't even get like the Sunday Ticket for YouTube TV. I just get YouTube TV, and that's $70 a month right there. So it's a killer for sure. But you know, it is what it is.
It's what it is. But anyway, guys, we're here to talk football. We're here to talk NFC football. We're obviously going to save. I didn't know what division I was going to do last, but we're going to save Matt South for last because obviously, look, we're going to let him talk about his Saints and other stuff. But I want to start off with the NFC West because I feel like with this division, you have one team who's going all in. You have two teams where you don't know what to expect out of them. And then you have one team where, I'll be honest with you, I low-key view them as a sleeper team going into this year. Obviously, we know who the team going all in is. It's San Francisco because I feel like, and I've been saying this for a while, this feels like the now or never year for them. This feels like the year where either you win the Super Bowl or you don't. And because I think next year you're going to move off a lot of guys. And Brock Purdy's going to get like $60 million a year. And Twitter's going the discourse of Twitter around it's going to be insane when in reality, Brock's kind of showing like, hey, I've gone to 2 championship games in a Super Bowl. I kind of deserve it. But the Rams and the Seahawks are where the fascination comes in because with both those teams, you don't really know what to expect. The Rams have an aging Matt Stafford, lost Aaron Donald, but they've, recycled some talent. They brought it back in. Are we okay?
Your mic did cut out.
Oh, well, can you hear me now? We good? What's going on?
Or maybe it's me. I don't know.
Oh, well, I can hear you perfectly, so folks, a little discourse there. But yeah, that's the thing with the Rams and then the Seahawks. It's, new year, new coach, turning over a new leaf. And then Arizona, I view as a sleeper in the sense of, they have Kyler Murray, second year under Jonathan Gannon, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is the most NFL-ready prospect in this draft, from this draft class, excuse me. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see me.
Now I can hear you.
There we go. Okay, you were scaring me for a second. So I'm going to repeat what I just said, just so Matt can hear it. Because with San Francisco, it feels like this is the now or never year for them to win a Super Bowl. With LA, I feel like they'll be competitive, but you don't know what you're going to get. Like, they're not Super Bowl competitive, but I think they're playoff competitive. Seattle's like in the hunt, like where they were last year, but they could, maybe surprise some people. And then Arizona's kind of, I want to say sleeper in the sense of like, how Detroit was 2 years ago or how Chicago was last year, where next year everyone's going to be talking about, hey, Arizona, this could be the year they take the leap.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, the Niners, I was watching the receiver documentary, which was really good. I enjoyed the quarterback when I enjoyed the receiver one, and seeing Debo and Kittle's struggle throughout the season. And you kind of get the sense of they have this team together right now. They have the perfect build. They have, of course, the quarterback, like you alluded to, with Brock Purdy being on the really cheap salary, probably one of the cheapest salaries that you could possibly ever have
like
out
$800K.
of a quarterback. Yeah, like an $800K, which is like pennies to an NFL team. But as soon as he starts making that money, we all know how it goes. There's going to be sacrifices made somewhere if they do want to keep him. Um, so there's definitely some decisions to be made, and I mean, you already see them trying to hold out on some decisions with the Ayuk deal going on. But I feel like they're going to give him the money because it seems Ricky Parasol isn't going to pan out as quickly as they hope to, due to injury concerns. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of a now or never type deal. They're going to have this window where they have these guys together for a little while longer, but as you said, this year's probably the now or never, and it's hard to get to that Super Bowl. And they already got there last season, and they're going to try to climb that mountaintop again and see if they can get there again. Which, I mean, they have the right head coach to do it. They have a lot of central key players around them to do it. When you have an offense like that, I mean, it's even possible for the last pick of the draft to go out there and perform well. So the main thing with them is going to be in the future to see once they do pay Purdy, if they do, how they'll keep things together and how they can keep their window alive. But if they had any good chance right now, like you said, now is the time for them to go.
I only say that just because it's the Purdy thing, but then also too, it's because everyone's getting older. The
Mm-hmm.
the Ayuk situation, we touched on this last night because Big Rat was bringing up some points with Peter Schrager releasing tweets where there's connections there between San Francisco and Washington. So I don't know what's going to happen there. If it's Pittsburgh, if it's Washington, I feel like they might be using Washington to get more out of Pittsburgh. But at the end of the day, I think with Ayuk, he's just going to end up resigning. Kind of like what we saw. We'll get into this later, but what happened in Dallas today. Where eventually the player caves. Well, actually, no, that was the organization caving, not the player caving. But with this one, I can see the
Mm-hmm.
player caving to what the organization is willing to give them financially, and then maybe they move off of like you were saying with receiver. I also watched it too. I liked it a lot. With moving off of Debo maybe for next year, if they feel like Ricky Pearsall's ready to take that leap into his second NFL season. The other big thing too with San Francisco as well is just the fact that, and I hate people doing this, but from a fantasy standpoint, everyone's like, oh, like, don't draft Christian McCaffrey. He's due for an injury. He's due for an injury. I'm like, I don't like saying that because you're wishing it upon people. I'm just scared to draft him because
Yeah.
the RB, the guy who's always supposed to be the first overall pick, it never pans out. I got haunted in 2018 with Le'Veon Bell as number 2 overall. I have first overall in a league coming up this Sunday, and there's 2 players I'm between drafting, so we'll see what happens there. But with San Francisco, it's just like eventually you got to do it because I've been saying this for a while because Lynch and Shanahan have been there since 2017, and you've been to multiple NFC Championship games. You've been to 2 Super Bowls, obviously losing both to Kansas City, but eventually you have to realize that this window is closing a lot quicker than you think. The LA Rams, it's fascinating because you have talent on the roster. Kyron Williams, you have Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp's a player I feel like people are forgetting about. But you
Mm-hmm.
have an aging Matt Stafford, and you have Jimmy Garoppolo there as your break glass case of emergency quarterback after his 2-game suspension because I don't think Stetson Bennett's ready to be QB2 there. Um, Losing Aaron Donald does suck for them. But I feel like the defense can rebound now to where it's like not the monumental loss that people would paint it as. It's more of a, hey, we lost him. We're going to get over it. We'll be fine. Seattle is the real question mark because last year we truly saw Geno regress. The defense still held its own, but then you have pieces there, but like it's for Seattle, it's kind of that like you're good enough to be in the middle of the pack, but you're not good enough to be a Super Bowl. Like you're not good enough to be like a well calibered playoff team. Alex is probably wishing bad things happen to me right now after saying those words, but it is what it is. And then Arizona's been that team I've been sweet on for a little bit now because I know last year we're all kind of making fun of Jonathan Gannon, for the whole. Do you remember that video that was released where he was like, "Do you have that fire in your gut? Did you take the bus to get here today?" Do you remember that video at all?
Yeah, I remember that.
And people were making fun of him, but then I realized towards the end of the season, like when they went into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers, and they went into Philly and beat the Eagles, they're not the best team, but they're playing hard for their coach even in late December when the season's over with. And I think Kyler Murray finally getting a proper wide receiver one. Look, I know he's had D Hop, I know he had Christian Kirk, but I said this earlier when you were having mic issues with me, but Marvin Harrison Jr. was the most NFL ready prospect coming out of this draft. They have some pieces there where it's like, hey, like look for them, but I'm not saying look for them to be good. I'm saying look for them to, play spoiler down the line towards the end of the season. Look for them to maybe win a couple games people don't think they're going to win. And you know what? I think Kyler Murray in a full season of health coming off of an ACL, we're going to kind of see that maybe hey, he can reach his potential to where then 2025 is the year where, Arizona goes out and makes a few moves to really solidify their roster and try to make a run back, especially too with the fact you don't know what Seattle is, with the fact that LA's window's kind of closing-ish to a degree, and the fact too that we know with San Francisco, this is truly the year. I'm not saying San Francisco's gonna be bad in 25, but the fact that San Francisco Super Bowl window is so close to being shut, Arizona's in the perfect situation right now.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. And the Rams last year, they were kind of on that downturn where they were starting to see the effects of them going all in to get that Super Bowl,
Yep.
which they better be glad that they did because they went how long without having a number one overall or number one pick? It was
8 years.
very long time. 8 years. That's so long. Oh my God. I'd hate being a Rams fan and watching the draft every year and not having a first round pick. Whenever the Saints trade a first round pick, I'm just distraught. But yeah, the Rams, they have a solid roster. I mean, Kyron Williams, he was the breakout running back. I was able to pick him up, and he showed out. He showed out for sure. And then, of course, Puka, another miraculous rookie story. So with him and Cooper Kupp together, I think Stafford's going to do some good things this year. And I mean, he'll consistently stay good, I believe. But the question with him is, when will we see him start to regress eventually? Because one of his big thing is his arm talent. And at some point, you just see the arm talent go out, and they have to adapt and change. I mean, Brady and Drew Brees kind of had to adapt and change as they got older. All these older quarterbacks, they have to figure out a way to translate well into the game as they get older. And that's what we'll kind of see we'll need to be seeing with Matthew Stafford, because one of his big things has always been the arm talent.
And the fact that he's
So
on the wrong side
that'll
of
be
30.
a question. Yes, and that'll definitely be a question for Matt Stafford is how long can he keep up that elite arm talent, and how will he transition when he doesn't have that? Which, I mean, having Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, having those two, I think that definitely helps a lot because they're not necessarily just these deep range target guys. But the Rams, I think they'll be pretty solid. And as you alluded to with the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's a fantastic prospect. We expect big things out of him. I do wonder how much attention he's going to be seeing from NFL defenses, because you just have to think how they're going to be able to scheme him open and be able to get him in good situations. When their supporting cast isn't really the best, they definitely really needed Marvin Harrison Jr. on this team. I know they have the up-and-comer Trey McBride at tight end. He had a pretty good season last season. I think they'll be kind of scrappy. But I don't necessarily think they'll be eyeing the playoffs. They might be. They'll probably be searching around that 6, 7, maybe even 8 wins. They'll be kind of a middling team. And the Seahawks, I believe they could be kind of in there for possibly trying to compete. They've managed to stay afloat with Geno Smith at quarterback. They still have all their wide receivers. I wonder if Lockett, when people keep always trying to predict when Lockett's big turn down is going to go, but that's why they went and got Jackson Smith and Jigba. So, yeah, it's the NFC West is definitely going to be an interesting thing. And I was telling Griff before the thing, I asked Microsoft Copilot, not a sponsor of the podcast, to see what its predictions are, since everything else is AI in 2024. Let's just make a little fun thing and have AI predict the things. And they have the San Francisco 49ers expected to dominate the division. So it definitely thinks they're going to win. And it has the Seattle Seahawks predicted to be a strong playoff contender. So emphasis on strong there. The Rams might face a challenging season. I guess it's thinking about the Aaron Donald loss, as you alluded to. And it says the Cardinals are expected to be in a rebuilding phase, which I don't know if I would say rebuilding, since Kyler Murray will be back, and I think they'll kind of fight. But that's what AI thinks of the NFC West, at least.
So with Arizona, and also too, I got my first fantasy league I had last night. I got Trey McBride as my tight end. I feel like with Marvin Harrison Jr. being there, it's not going to kill Trey's value. So that's one thing I want to throw out. You have here's those 2 security blankets. Let's think Kyler. Look, I know, like I said earlier, he had DeAndre Hopkins, but besides that one game against Buffalo, D-Hop never did anything that made you go, wow, in Arizona. And then also, too, he was there a time when the organization was truly in turmoil with the Steve Keim, Cliff Kingsbury. It wasn't really the best. Now you have Monty Austinfort and you have Jonathan Gannon, the head coach, which is looking good. And when I say I'm like with Arizona sleeper, I'm not saying sleeper to make the playoffs. I'm saying sleeper to, surprise people, kind of like, because every year there's always those teams where for the next year you're kind of like, hey, watch out for them. Like they're doing some stuff. Like I think 5-12, 5-11 or 5-12 or 6-11 is where I would paint the picture for the Arizona Cardinals going. Seattle, I think, is in that same spot of last year where it's like, week 16, they have to win. If they win the game, their playoff percentage goes from like to 64%, but if they lose it, you have 18% chance to make the playoffs, where it's like they have those like must-win games all throughout December, basically from after Thanksgiving to Christmas. The Rams, I think 9-8, 10-7, I think is their potential. And then I think for San Francisco, 13-4, just paint the picture just like that. Next division at hand.
I agree with you.
Yeah. The next division at hand, I wanted to do the North, but I'm going to save the North. I want to do the NFC East because obviously, look, there's a lot of big news coming out of the division today. CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to pull up the exact finances of it, which I was a little sad because I don't know if I've never said this to you, but I've said this on the podcast that CeeDee Lamb to me was always a pipe dream of a acquisition for the Patriots, but today Jerry Jones decided to open up the checkbook as let's go. Where is Mr. Lamb? Oh, there it is. CeeDee Lamb. Oh no, I have to go to Adam Schefter for this because I'm trying to get the whole things because I know it's the contract that was signed was huge. Okay, so here it is.
Oh yeah.
Cowboys and All-Pro wide receiver CeeDee Lamb reached agreement today on a record 4-year, $136 million deal that now makes him the second highest paid non-QB in NFL history. The deal includes a $38 million signing bonus, the largest ever given to a wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb's contract situation is now settled, but there are still several pending. Obviously, Ayuk and Williams, the Hassan Reddick stuff, and the Jamar Chase stuff. But unlike the Brandon Ayuk situation, where I'm saying this is Ayuk and his agent caving to what the John Lynch is willing to give, this is Jerry Jones basically just saying, look, we have to give you the money, and Dak Prescott, I don't know if he's a Dallas Cowboy in 2025. Dallas has said all in, to which I also want to say this too. For anyone online saying that Dallas is not America's team, you're just fooling yourself. They will be, it's like wrestling, WWE, then, now, forever. Dallas Cowboys, America's team. That's just one thing. Hell, their cheerleaders got a Netflix show. I watched it, but their cheerleaders got a Netflix show. Well, who other team in the league is getting that? No one, because the Star is a brand that, look, we love to hate on. But with a contract like this, it kind of shows that Jerry knew he had to pay CeeDee Lamb. He knew he could not let him walk. But then it's this weird situation with Dallas now where it's like, hey, you paid your wide receiver, but your wide receiver needs quarterback. Oh, but you also have a stud defensive end on the other side of the ball who's going to want the same money that CeeDee Lamb just got. So Dallas has really put themselves in a situation where it's like, where do you go from here? What do you do after 2024?
Yep, they're going to definitely have to navigate the perils of paying a quarterback high-end money, paying a wide receiver high-end money, and paying Micah Parsons high-end money. I think they'll be able to make it work where they keep those three, but paying other players around them makes it pretty difficult. It definitely gets harder to construct a team as you're having to pay all these guys what they deserve, honestly, because they go out there and ball out and make a whole bunch of money, which I need to contact CeeDee Lamb's agent. I need to borrow $1 real fast because that'd be nice, but they had to do it. They need CeeDee Lamb because, what are they going to do? Just chunk it up to Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert? Yeah, they needed CeeDee Lamb for sure. So Jerry Jones had to do it. As far as how their season's going to go, I think they're going to be solid. They're definitely going to be pretty much right where they were last season, where they're kind of neck and neck with the Eagles fighting for this top of the division. And I think it's just going to be those two teams that's really going to be battling it out for this division. It's going to be a close race at the end of the day, and both of these teams could make the playoffs, but we'll see.
So with this division, I'll just do a 4-team rundown. because you have a chance where there's 3 coaches in this division that are fired at the end of the season. There's a very strong possibility of that happening because look, if Dallas doesn't do anything, Mike McCarthy's just going to be, they're going to let him walk. They won't re-sign him. They'll bring in someone else. The Philadelphia Eagles intrigue me because of who they've lost. Fletcher Cox is retired. Jason Kelsey is retired. For any of you people out there that are fantasy footballers, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Do not draft Saquon Barkley. I think because of Jalen Hurts' running ability plus the tush push, he's going to steal a lot of those goal line touchdowns. That's why last night, I was waiting for Jordan Love because I feel like you could have gotten the value later, but Jalen Hurts was staring at me in the face, and I was like, I got to draft him. The Eagles intrigue me because of what happened at the end of last season. The fact that they just collapsed. You look at their schedule from that San Francisco game where Big Dom got kicked out to going to Dallas and getting embarrassed, losing to Drew Lock, nearly letting the Giants come back on you with Tyrod Taylor on Christmas Day, losing to the Cardinals, losing to the Giants, I believe, Week 18, and then getting embarrassed in Tampa Bay in the playoffs to them, even though they won the division. But comparing the two, the Buccaneers are a much worse team than the Eagles. So this year, I think there's just a lot of pressure on them to win. Be a dominant team. Start off strong, end strong. The Commanders, I feel like a lot of... this is what I have to say about the Commanders. You probably know this because of SEC. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I just look at the rest of their roster outside of Brian Robinson and Terry McLaurin, and I'm like, there's no one really that makes you go, wow, that guy's really good, or wow, that player's this. Like, it's kind of, Like, I think the Commanders are going to be like that, I don't know, 6-11, 7-10 team where it's like, hey, they did good, but there's a lot of room to improve. There's still, because I feel like this year they kind of did what teams shouldn't do. They just gave out money because they had the money to give. Like, I know this year Patriots are kind of criticized for not spending, but at the same time, too, they know next year, hey, they'll have number 1 room in cap, and there's a lot better of a free agency. Meanwhile, with Washington this year, they just went out and, hey, Jeremy Chin, you want to come here? Hey, Bobby Wagner, you're close to retirement. You want another bag? Sure. Austin Eckler, which I still think, that one baffles me because I think Eckler's, probably going to retire very soon. Mm-hmm. And then you have the Giants. The Giants intrigue me. Obviously, Daniel Jones is a big focal point of me on Twitter and this podcast. But for him and this whole organization, it's a now or never year. I'm not saying they have to be spectacular. It's just Danny Dimes has to play well. And just coming off the ACL tear, I don't know if that's the case. They're the kind of team where I could see them getting into a lot of low-scoring games, and if their defense can basically get a few turnovers, put them in a good field position, you convert that into points, you'll win some football games. I don't trust them in shootouts against, say them and the Eagles going back and forth. You're not going to win that fight. You're going back and forth with the Dallas Cowboys, chances are you're not going to win that fight, especially to the fact that their 2 games against the Giants are on Thursday Night Football and the 4:30 Thanksgiving slot. But the Giants defensively is what I'm most looking forward to. Seeing Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence on that line. They finally have a solid linebacking core, and then the secondary, we'll see what happens there. But the Giants are definitely the most intriguing team because they have the most on the line. I know everyone's going to say Dallas or anything else like that, but every year Jerry Jones is going to sell you on, this is the year Dallas does it. This is the year for the first time since Matt and I were toddlers that they're going to get to a conference championship game. When in reality they don't, and Stephen A. Smith is the happiest person on this earth. So we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Philly to win this division because I trust the fact that I think that Nick Sirianni can get his guys back on board.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree with you. And pretty much the Commanders, what they just want to see is they want to see their investment on their quarterback show some promise. Because at the end of the day, when you draft one of these young quarterbacks, the hit rate on them is pretty hard.
It's a lottery ticket.
Yes, it's definitely a lottery ticket, and you just want to see that investment pay off. And as long as he has a good season, that's a good season for them. If he just shows promise and shows that they drafted the right guy, they're looking at something good. Which, I mean, Jaden Daniels, I think he's going to be pretty solid. Definitely a good player there. And they'll just need to build around him and give him the best chance to succeed at the end of the day. So as far as their season goes, I don't think they're going to do really well win total-wise, but as long as Jaden Daniels shows promise, has a good season for him, puts up some stats, shows some highlights, that's all they need. With the Giants, I'm sorry, Jared. um, it was interesting to see their behind the scenes of their Hard Knocks. I did the Hard Knocks in the off season. I watched that on HBO Max. That was pretty interesting to watch. With their whole situation of you're gonna let Saquon walk, and then they kind of replaced him with Devin Singletary. They did get Malik Neighbors, who wasn't the number one wide receiver in the draft, but if it was any other draft, he would be a really solid number one wide receiver taken. So I think you'll see some good things out of Neighbors. Maybe he'll make Daniel Jones look kind of solid. Who knows? Questionable. I don't know. That pick 6 in the preseason was pretty yikes. But I mean, he's coming off injury. I guess they're just going to see what they have in them. I know they kind of toyed around with the thought of maybe getting a quarterback, but they just weren't really in the best position. They did trade for Brian Burns for whatever reason. I don't know if this was the best time for them to go and get him, but I mean, I guess they think it could pan out for him. But I don't really see the Giants or the Commanders really doing too much. They're going to be kind of battling for that last spot, which I'd probably lean towards the Giants ending up there in that last spot. I think the Saquon, not having him on the team is really going to hurt.
So, I'll let you go. I'll let you go.
No, go ahead.
No, that was the only thing I was going to say, too, is just the fact that Daniel does not have that Saquon security blanket anymore can kind of hurt them. The Brian Burns thing, I think they basically just saw an opportunity to get a all-pro caliber defensive end. And, they're just like, if we don't... That's why I was saying that thing earlier where I'm saying, like, with them, they can stay in low-scoring games where their defense can give them a chance to win. Build around the defense because your offense isn't exactly top of the league caliber. Their offensive line is also a huge question mark because guys like Evan Neal, who were unstoppable in Alabama and you could not get around them, have turned into a turnstile since they've entered the NFL. The Giants have a lot of question marks. There's a subsection of their fan base. It's interesting. There's the section where it's like high on Daniel Jones. They want to see him succeed. He's their guy. He's earned it, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have the people, Jared's in this category where they want Jones off the roster. They do not like him. They're over him. Basically, the game last year, opening night against the Dallas Cowboys, where they just got walked. They got dog walked off the field. They basically saw that and were just like, yeah, no, we don't want that anymore. And the fact, too, they saw what happened, and even with New York as well. You have the Tommy DeVito story happen last year, but we all know, look, clock struck midnight it was actually against your Saints. Saints was the first game where everyone was like, oh, hey, that's why Tommy DeVito was an undrafted quarterback. And then with the Commanders, the Commanders are in that same situation where the Patriots are, where you just want to see a rookie quarterback play well. You want to see that, hey, year 2, you're going to take that leap. Where it's this year, we just want to see those signs that you can be good. Year 2 is about being like, hey, you're ready to take off. It's kind of like the pre-boarding before taking off on a plane.
Yep. That's true. But yeah, as far as like you're saying, I'd probably go with the Eagles to win the division. I think the Saquon addition will add some things. As you're saying, that safety blanket of Saquon to Daniel Jones, that was, they would keep showing the stats with Saquon, without Saquon, and it was just like a nosedive. It was ridiculous. I trust that Eagles team. I think Jalen Hurts is a great leader. I know some people like to kind of not really give him his flowers necessarily, but kind of doubt him in some aspects. But I think they'll be a solid team. They'll go out there and do things. I know they did lose some key pieces, like you said, Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey. Those two are dogs in the trenches, which those will hurt. Maybe the tush push won't be as effective without a guy of a Jason Kelsey caliber, but at the end of the day, I think these two teams are going to fight. It's going to be kind of like last season where it's maybe a win or two between the two, but I would probably go with the Eagles to take it this time around, and maybe the Cowboys will push themselves into a wild card position. And on that note, what AI thinks, back to the co-pilot thing, it has the Eagles expected to lead the division with a strong record, so co-pilot is there as well. The Commanders are predicted to have a solid season, potentially making the playoffs. So that's pretty spicy. The Cowboys are likely to be competitive and might fall short of the playoffs. So co-pilot is not with America's team. And then the Giants are expected to struggle this season.
I think that's all very accurate. Just like I said, we'll have to wait and see. That one other player on the Cowboys I do trust is Jake Ferguson, but outside of Lamb and Ferguson, it's kind of like, what is your offense? Like you said, it's I think what was it, Brand Cooks and like Ezekiel Elliott, which Ezekiel Elliott now is not what Ezekiel Elliott was even 3 years ago. So
That's true.
that's that. Um, the most intriguing, what I think is the most hard. This is the hardest division to read in all of football, the NFC North, which a few years ago you would have laughed at saying that. But you have the Detroit Lions, who are here. They're no longer this pushover laughingstock franchise. You have the Green Bay Packers, who showed last year, without Aaron Rodgers, we can still be very good, and who are on the precipice of getting to the NFC Championship game. You have the new look Chicago Bears, who are ready to get out of the way of being obscure, out of the way of being a laughingstock. You're an OG franchise in this league, or the OG franchise, excuse me. And then you have the Minnesota Vikings, who there's been some loss. You still have one of the best players in the NFL, and you have a coach that could probably mess around and get to maybe 7 or 8 or 9 wins. This division is super hard to read just because I feel like for all four of these teams, I think I know how it's going to go, but you don't know truly until you play the games. And that's why we play these games, because I honestly don't know what to think of how any of these teams can do. I can see it going either way. But at the end of the day, if I had to still pick, I would pick Detroit. I would pick the Detroit Lions to repeat as division winners again.
I think I would agree with you. That Lions team, they have a really, really, really solid roster.
Got better
Just all
defensively.
around. Got better defensively at the end of the day, too. And, I mean, I love it for Jared Goff. I love the situation they've got themselves into. I love it for the Lions fans. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a dog. He's that guy. I do wonder if Jameson Williams will make a step up this season. That'd be interesting to see. And of course, Sam Laporta, probably the face of tight ends for the future. You wonder if Brock Bowers will sit there with him next season as well. But the Lions, they're completely solid all around. The Green Bay Packers and Chicago Bears, I think they're going to give them a run for their money. But I think it's going to be a tight race with those three teams.
Yep.
But I think at the end of the day, the Lions will end up going back and winning that division.
So with this division, I still have it. So I have Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago, Minnesota. That's how I have it. With Minnesota, I just think that it's a step back year because, starting quarterback's gone. JJ McCarthy's out for the year. Kevin O'Connell did well last year by getting Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins. He got potential out of them, but at the end of the day, it's like the Tommy DeVito thing. You can have good games, but eventually the carriage is gonna turn back into a pumpkin and the clock's gonna strike midnight. With Sam Darnold, who knows how long that lasts. And also too, with cut down day, I could see them making a move to get another quarterback because I don't know who's behind him, but I remember last year Jaron Hall looked egregiously terrible against the Green Bay Packers. Chicago, look, I know it's exciting. Bears fans are very excited for their team. They have their guy. But besides that, offensively, Rome Odunze, I think, is going to be very good. The offensive line, I still want to see what they are. DeAndre Swift is an RB1. I don't know if that's the play. And then you have DJ Moore's really good. Keenan Allen's older. And then Cole Kmet, he's a good tight end, but he's not like where Sam Laporta is. That's just the matter of the things. So with Chicago, I can see them going through growing pains. And here's the other thing with Chicago, too. I don't think they play a divisional opponent until week 11. It's basically their last.
Wow.
So I think like 6. Yeah. I'm going to pull. I do a lot of things on the fly here, folks. If it's your first time, welcome. But if it's not, you know me. So Chicago, they play Tennessee week 1. But then week 2, as I try to find the Bear on my score app, which I'm having. There we go. So the Bears have week 2 at Houston Sunday Night Football. That's a game that's going to tell us a lot about them out of the gate. But basically, so I was telling you, they don't play a divisional team until week 11. So they play the Patriots week 10, but then they play versus Packers, versus Vikings, at Lions, at 49ers, at Vikings, versus Lions, versus Seahawks, at Packers. So you got to get those out of conference wins, and you got to get those conference wins early, because I think you have, if they want a chance to get into the playoffs, I think you have to go 3-3 in division, because those divisional games matter a ton. One fun fact also too that I learned for this coming season is the Detroit Lions schedule. So obviously, Detroit plays in a dome, and Jared plays better in warmer weather as opposed to colder weather. Did you know that this year Jared Goff only has one game in cold weather the entire year? They play home to the Rams, home to the Buccaneers, Dome Stadium. At the Cardinals, we all know what that is. Versus the Seahawks, Dome. At the Cowboys, Dome. At the Vikings, Dome. Versus the Titans, Dome. At the Packers, early November, it's not as cold. At the Texans, it's in Texas. Jaguars, Dome. Colts, Dome. Versus the Bears and Packers and the Bills, Dome. At the Bears, at the 49ers. San Francisco's still mild, so it's not freezing cold. Their only freezing cold game of the year where Jared Goff has to face the elements is that Week 16 game against the Chicago Bears. That's a very interesting little note to point out. But one thing I want to say right now is don't sleep on the Green Bay Packers again, folks. That's one thing I'm going to say. I think the Packers will be a wild card team, but I think the Lions, I don't know if they'll run away with the division, but I feel like they'll be, they'll probably clinch right before Christmas. They won't, or just after Christmas. I don't think it's going to come down to Week 18.
Yeah, for sure. And the Bears, I think they're a really exciting team. And the interesting thing going into the season with the quarterbacks, I thought that both of these teams had probably the best situation for a young quarterback to come into.
Yeah.
The Vikings, you give them arguably the best wide receiver in the game right now, Justin Jefferson, and an ascending Jordan Addison.
Yep.
And they have Hawk there as well. Solid team all around offensively. They were the second best landing spot to me. The Bears, what they did with that haul from the Panthers, I love to see it personally as a division rival. They kind of fleeced them out. I mean, they got Caleb Williams, who's probably will most likely be better than Bryce Young. I'm sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
Just based on the situation that he's in, because a lot of this stuff is so situationally based. It depends on who your coach is. It depends on what you have around you. It depends on how that team builds around you, and it just depends on so many other factors than just your talent. All these guys have talent because they made it into the league at the end of the day. And I'm not going to sit here and be an apologist and be like, oh, boo-hoo, they didn't have this happen, this happened, this happened. At the end of the day, they have to go out there and make it happen as well. But if you don't have any help, it's hard to get anywhere. And the Bears, they realized this, and they went out there and they gave Caleb Williams probably the best situation a number one quarterback has ever had. The only probably better guy that had it any better, maybe Andrew Luck, and I would arguably say that this might be better. I mean, you give him DJ Moore, solid wide receiver. He had a really good year last year on a middling Bears team. Keenan Allen, really good security blanket. Like you said, he is getting older, but he had so many targets. He helped Justin Herbert tremendously. I imagine he'll still be pretty solid. And then they still double down and give him a rookie wide receiver who should be really solid in Rome Odunze. Will he have an amazing rookie season just because of all these mouths to feed? Probably not, but he'll still be really solid. And you can see that growth with Caleb and Rome. I really love whenever teams take a young quarterback and pair him with a nice wide receiver. I always akin it to the A.J. Green, Andy Dalton thing.
Yep.
Andy Dalton was set up to succeed because he had A.J. Green. Is Rome Odunze an A.J. Green type wide receiver? I don't know. We'll see. But solid team all around. The main thing, like you pointed out, will be that offensive line. I'm sure the defensive line will be pretty solid. Still got Montez Sweat there, and their defense should be pretty solid all
Really
around.
good secondary.
So, yes, really good secondary. So I think the Bears are definitely going to be fighting for a playoff. Unfortunately, Bears fans, I'm just going to predict it that they're just going to fall just slight of the playoffs. But still, at the end of the day, that's an exciting season for Bears fan. Caleb Williams is probably going to go out there and have the best statistical passing yard season of any Bears quarterback ever. Yeah, 4,000 yards,
Yep.
that magical number. I think he's going to pass that his first year. I'm putting all these expectations on the guy, so I hope it goes well for him. So Bears fans, I think it's going to be pretty exciting going forward. But at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to the Packers and the Lions fighting for this division. The Packers, they are a scrappy young bunch. It was pretty exciting how they went into the playoffs as like this just mega young team going out on the road, getting a win. Very exciting for the Packers. And they have some exciting things going on there as well. And you kind of just want to see that continue. You want to see them build upon that and continue that and maintain consistency, which I do think they will be able to handle it because they have the right head coach in place there. So that being said, I would have the Lions winning one more game than the Packers. Packers being second, the Bears barely missing the playoffs, and the Vikings, like you said, unfortunately, J.J. McCarthy got hurt. It would have been interesting to see where he builds upon all these questions that people had on him being on a run-dominant Michigan team. Seeing how things went with Jordan Addison and Jay Jettis, but that's how I have it.
Yeah, so I have it in a similar sense where I could see Detroit going 11-6 or 12-5. I can see Green Bay going 10 and maybe getting to 11, but 10-7 I think is more likely. Chicago, I'm gonna have it 8-9. I think there's a couple losses that hurt them. Basically there's a couple upset losses early in the season. That's why I look at that week 2 Sunday Night Football game when they go to Houston to play the Texans as I knock my MacBook over. Because that game right there, we're going to find out about both teams. We're going to see what is Houston made out of, what is Chicago made out of. Because those are two teams people are hyping up a lot right now. I think Houston's going to be good. I don't think they're Super Bowl good, but we talked about that last night. The Vikings, I think, had a chance to be competitive this year, but once J.J. McCarthy's meniscus went, that's where it all ended. So I think this is like a write-off here. It's a tax write-off here. I don't think Kevin O'Connell's job's in jeopardy. I don't think there's any risk of him getting fired. The only coach that I think has a chance of getting fired is Matt Eberflus, honestly. Dan Campbell's earned job. He basically has job security in Detroit for the next, I think, 4 or 5 years, unless it goes really south in Detroit. But when I look at each team right now, before we go to co-pilot, if I were to label a best case scenario for every team, I think Detroit's is going to the Super Bowl. Green Bay's is winning a playoff game again. Chicago would be making the playoffs, but like we said, I think they just fall short to where it's next year. There's that hunger in them, where the bear catches the salmon. But I need to see it before I buy into the stock. That's what it is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then with Minnesota, it's just we know it. It's just wait until just wait a year and then we see where it goes.
Yep. As far as co-pilot, like you alluded to, I think they're kind of going based off last year, the way I read these, but because they have the Lions predicted to be the top of the division, showing significant improvement. The Packers might face challenges without Aaron Rodgers, they say, which we already know they're kind of over that hump.
This 2023 co-pilot?
That's what I'm thinking. And they have the Vikings expected to be a strong contenders for a playoff spot, and the Bears are likely to be in a real rebuilding phase. So questionable there, co-pilot.
Yeah, I think I see that sometimes too with the AI stuff where it's okay, you're going off of what happened last year, not what's happening this year. So we'll wait and see. But folks, This is the wonderful part of the show where I put myself on mute. I let him talk about the black and gold, the fleur-de-lis. Take it away, sir.
The black and gold, or this season, as I'm calling, the black hole of mediocrity. It just seems that way. I sound so down, oh my God. But, I mean, there's probably nowhere. Probably the least fun spot to be as an NFL fan is when your team is just on that middling line where,
Purgatory.
yeah, it's just purgatory because that's just all they've been since Drew Brees left, since Sean Payton left. That's all they've been is just this middling purgatory team where it's like, we'll pick up some wins here, pick up some losses, pick up some wins. They end up, I know you'd said this earlier before the show, where they look like they could possibly threaten to make the playoffs, but they need like 3 or 4 things to mathematically make it happen. And of course, it's not going to happen. So it's no point in getting your hopes up. And it's not like they're sitting there losing a bunch of games. You can be like, oh, hoping for rebuilding phase. Already know Saints Twitter is already tired of Derek Carr.
My dad
I've seen
included.
so much hype. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen so much hype over Spencer Rattler. That'll be a question. I saw a tweet today by someone who said it's gonna be a chaotic scene on Saints Twitter and in the Superdome if Derek Carr comes out and has a 3 and out as his first possession. Which, to be fair to Derek Carr, I'm not a Derek Carr apologist by all means, but that offensive line is going to be a struggle. You talked about it earlier before the podcast. Ramczyk being hurt, that's a huge thing. Honestly, with the way his injury sounds, I would be surprised if he is able to come back and play at a high capacity at all anymore. It might honestly sound more of a he didn't get cut mainly because, or he didn't retire or anything, mainly because it would financially destroy the Saints right now. They got the rookie playing left tackle Fuaga. Eric McCoy holding down the center, and then right tackle, they're going to roll with Trevor Penning. We'll see how that pans out. I have my questions about that whole left side of the line and then the right side of the line with the tackle. It's going to be rough playing behind that offensive line, and it was already kind of shaky last season. So things are going to be scary for Derek Carr behind that offensive line, and I feel like our receiver core is kind of We'll see if Shaheed's able to step up and be a true number 2. I don't know. Olave, of course, he's a stud, but there's only so much one guy can do at the end of the day. But yeah, the defense, it's getting older. I think Chase Young's going to have a pretty good season. He's had a pretty good preseason, pretty good camp. I think he's going to go out there and play pretty good and play himself into a contract for another team somewhere. But yeah, my guy, Cam Jordan, he's getting older. He had a middling season last season. We'll see if he's able to build off anything with that. DeMario, of course, he's still a solid linebacker, but he's not getting any younger either. Still got Lattimore, which in my opinion, he's probably the best player on the team. The defense will still be solid and keep us in games, but at the end of the day, I don't think the offense is really going to do it. I do think this is probably going to be their worst season in a while, in a very long while. They managed to win 9 games last season. I'm probably going to put it 6 wins. That's just my cold prediction that I'm kind of having, which, as you were alluding to, we could go based off kind of flying by the seat of our pants real fast. And let me just look at the schedule real fast and see how many wins I see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see like 5 or 6 wins, honestly, just looking at the schedule right now. I think we're going to win a Carolina game. I could honestly see Carolina possibly giving us a hard fight and maybe beating us at Carolina, but I could see us beating Carolina at home. Dallas, Philadelphia, I don't see us winning. Atlanta's probably going to, as much as it pains me to say that, they're probably going to sweep us this season.
You guys are good in Mercedes-Benz, though.
Yeah, we are historically good there, but we'll see how it goes. Kansas City, yeah, right. Denver, Sean Payton game. That's going to be an interesting game. I'm ready to see that one. I want to see how badly Sean Payton wants to beat us or not, but that could be a win. Cleveland's up in the air because you never know if Deshaun Watson, how he's going to turn out, but their defense is solid. Maybe the New York game. Um, Maybe Washington. Maybe Vegas. There's a bunch of maybes in there, and I'm questioning it. But I'm going to say 6 wins. That's where I'm going to put it at. Dennis Allen gets fired. We start anew. We'll see if our new offensive coordinator can do anything for us, and we'll see where it goes from there. My hopes is we can land Ben Johnson somehow. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I know, like, because like I think I've told you this in the past before. I referenced my wonderful father because he's a Saints fan, but I know he's excited about Clint Kubiak coming in to run the offense because I feel like it's just most
Mm-hmm.
Saints fans are happy Pete Carmichael got fired after being there for 15 years. Um, the way I view New Orleans for a while, ever since Peyton left, is kind of that like share get off the pot where it's like either go all in and try to win and be super competitive, or burn it to
Mm-hmm.
the ground and just have some of those growing pains years, you know. Because worst case scenario this year, if they want to move on from Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler is always a good option to have there. You can always draft someone as well, just in case it doesn't work out. But I don't think that free agency splash is the way to go, especially to considering Chris Olave is going to want a bag next offseason, more than likely. Um, Trevor Penning is a guy I wanted him to work out just because I loved him coming out of Northern Iowa. I love the interview where he's basically was just a pure psychopath on the football field. That's what you need when you have like when you're playing
Yeah.
football. You need psychopaths on your football team. It's as simple as that. But with the Saints, I just feel like the whole cap wizardry that Mickey Loomis pulls off. Eventually, it's just like year after year. It's like, look, something's got to give with the Saints. And also, I'm excited to see Willie Gay. I'll say that. And I've had this take for a long time, but I still think Demario is one of the most underrated linebackers in the National Football League. I feel like
Oh yeah, he's
he doesn't get the love that he should get.
between him or Vilma. They're the second best free agency signing the Saints have ever had. Demario Davis, linebacker out of Arkansas State. He's a stud. Um,
Who's number one
but
best free
yeah,
agency signing?
of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Drew Brees himself. But yeah, like you had alluded to, ever since that guard left, it's like they've just been trying to hold on. And I mean, Pete Carmichael, he had some seasons where he would kind of be. He was always in tune with the offense. And he was always doing things, but he wasn't the guy making the plays. That was Sean Payton. So at that point, we're just kind of running a ship without the captain.
Yeah.
So it was time to try to change things up offensively. But I think those offensive line struggles are just going to hit too hard for even Kubiak to maybe even do something. But I am interested to see how the offense performs with him. I want to see some growth there offensively because for the past couple years, it's always been we're a defensive football team and our offense just kind of gets us there. Even in the past couple years of Drew Brees' era, it was just some short passes here and there. It was hard to move the ball, but I would much rather take that than what we've had lately offensively. But we'll see. My hopes are not very high. Keeping them realistic, and maybe they'll surprise me, but I doubt it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. It's like I can see them. I think if you guys are 2-2 going into October, that's nothing to slight at. I think that's a good place to be. You know, if you let's say if you beat the Panthers but lose to the Cowboys, or if you beat one of the Cowboys or the Eagles, I think it's a huge confidence boost. But if those two wins come from the divisional games, it can just make a whirlwind of a difference of a season, especially going into October when you do have Kansas City coming to town in such a big spot on Monday Night Football. The rest of your division, there are two teams that are fighting for a playoff spot. And I said this to you before we went off air. I know people are expecting the Buccaneers to regress, but at the end of the day, they still have a hell of a good football team. They almost went to the NFC Championship game last year. This isn't just like a Buccaneers team that got lucky. Sure, was their game against Philly lucky? Maybe a little bit, but they're still good. I don't expect Baker to be Baker, but Mike Evans again. AJ Green was always one of those guys where it's always, oh, what's he going to do this year? And then he just balls. Mike Evans has been the same thing for years. Two players from this division I actually were in my fantasy draft last night. I got Mike Evans and I drafted Alvin Kamara because I feel like under Derek Carr's system, he plays better than Clint Kubiak, coming from a system where, hey, Christian McCaffrey was utilized pretty well in San Francisco. We'll know how to utilize AK-41, Mr. Airheads, very well. I just want to say something about Carolina quickly before we go back to you, because obviously we're going to finish with Atlanta. But I think if Carolina can just show some progress this year, and that Bryce Young, look, he's always going to be in CJ Stroud's shadow, but that's not a fault of his. That's what happens when you have a stupid owner like David Tepper who thinks, hey, I'm going to get in the football business, when in reality, let the football people football. Gail Benson does it. Glazer does it. I think Arthur Blank's actually a different story, but I know Gail Benson does it, where she just lets the football people football, and she just sit back and gets involved when she has to. So,
yep.
With Carolina, I think Dave Canales can show some signs of promise, but until it's a while. It's going to be a few years until Carolina's a relevant football team again.
Yep. I agree with you. At this point, like you said, you just want to see Bryce Young progress, build upon a better season, them end up doing better than what they were last year. They ended up being the worst team in the league, giving the Bears Caleb Williams after they just drafted a quarterback with the first pick last season.
Yep. And
it didn't pan out well. And the Bears probably learned to use that as a lesson and be like, hey, we need to make sure we're on top of things, which granted, they weren't necessarily like a bottom of the barrel football team like the Panthers were. I mean, their wide receivers are kind of just so middling. I mean, you got the corpse of Adam Thielen out there. Deontay Johnson, he's a solid wide receiver. I mean, is he a wide receiver one? Maybe their rookie running back will be able to help out Bryce Young, Jonathan Brooks. He's a solid player. But there's just a lot of ho-hum with the Panthers.
Yep.
A winning season for them would just seeing Bryce Young have a successful statistical season, like I was saying with Jaden Daniels.
And showing guys like Xavier Legette and Jonathan Brooks look good, showing that the offensive line can hold its own, because defensively, outside of Derek Brown and J.C. Horn, there's nothing there to really like go, ooh, look at them. Meanwhile, You have Atlanta. I know you're not the biggest fan of them. Obviously, look, they added Kirk Cousins, they added Michael Penix Jr., they added Matthew Judon. I believe they got Braylon Trice as well from Washington. Atlanta has the coaching and the pieces to get it done, like bringing in Raheem Morris, bringing in Zach Robinson to run it. But to do things like go and get Judon for a third, look, I know Judon, like, it helps the Patriots tremendously, don't get me wrong, but for Atlanta, they're acting like a team that's in a Super Bowl window when I don't think they are. I think for Atlanta, it's just get to the playoffs. But you have Kirk Cousins, who you gave it back to, and you drafted a top 10 pick. Because I feel like with Atlanta the last years, they've been drafting these players because of luxury. You know, where it's like, oh, yeah, we're going to get Kyle Pitts. Oh, yeah, we're going to get Drake London. They're good players, but we haven't seen much from them. And then you get Bijan Robinson, who everyone's super high on, but you didn't necessarily need. And Michael Penix this year, you could have gone out and gotten a Dallas Turner. You could have gotten a Leatu. You could have gotten a Fuaga. You know, any one of those players, they were available, but you chose to go the Michael Penix route. And then now, when Kirk Cousins' contract runs up, you're going to have to pay Michael Penix. So it's a huge thing, because I don't think Penix is a quarterback he sit. Penix is a start-now kind of guy in the NFL. So when it comes to this division, I'm going to go Bucks, Falcons, Saints, Panthers. Bucks, it's like I said, I trust it. They've won the division the last 2 years. Todd Bowles has proven, hey, I can be a good head coach in this league. We'll see what Liam Cohen brings in offensively for them. The Falcons, show me. Show me that you cannot be a mediocre organization. With your guys, it's just, we'll see what happens. Hold your breath and count to 10 and look forward to the future. And then for the Panthers, it's just, for the love of God, show us something. Like, you guys, it's just like, hey, impress me. But for Carolina, it's like, for the love of God, please don't be completely bad.
Yeah, the Falcons definitely do have a lot to prove and actually go out there and do that. They had this great offseason for themselves, bringing in Kirk, which kind of questionable bringing in a quarterback off his Achilles. We'll see how well he does, especially at his age. But that's probably why they went out and drafted Michael Penix Jr., just to give themselves that insurance. Like, hey, we could, if this thing just goes horribly bad with Kirk Cousins, worst case scenario, we have this rookie quarterback we can throw in there and start playing, and we have him on a cheaper salary compared to everybody else. So, worst case scenario, they're playing Michael Penix Jr. if Kirk Cousins doesn't play and he goes out there and has a decent season and does good things. And I mean, he has a good supporting cast around him. We have been waiting to see things from Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Bijan had a pretty good season last season, but with a running back like him, it's pretty easy for that to happen. Their offensive line's pretty solid. It's just a matter of them putting it all together offensively. And their defense has been a question too, and that's why you saw them go out there and get Judon, go out there and get Justin Simmons, who also talked with the Saints. But he's probably like, hey, the Falcons probably have a better chance of going to the playoffs. I'm going to go with them. But that's why you see them making these moves defensively to shore that up, because they think they have a solid team that can get to the playoffs. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's about to get into the playoffs and just get into the dance and seeing what happens from there. Because you can see a Cinderella team do something. But I kind of do like your take on the Buccaneers winning again, just based on the consistency that they built. 'Cause, I mean, they still have that core there that they kind of built around the Tom Brady regime.
Yep.
Their defense is still going to be solid. They still have offensive playmakers, but I kind of do think the Falcons and Bucks are going to end up fighting for that spot. But
It'll be like 10-7 and 9-8.
yeah, that's what I think. I'll probably lean, unfortunately, to the Falcons getting it. But with some of these stronger teams, it's going to be hard to get into that wild card spots. Those are going to be hard to come by, even with all three of them there. Which we could. I'll probably get to that here in a second. Who I think will get to the wild cards, but first,
Co-pilot, take us away.
Co-pilot has the Saints predicted to lead the division, which I don't know about that, Co-pilot, but if it happens, I'd be happy with it. The Falcons are expected to be competitive. The Panthers are likely to show some improvement, which probably so, considering where they were. And the Buccaneers might struggle without Tom Brady. So another allusion to being a year behind there. So, yeah, that's what Co-pilot thinks of the NFC South.
Yeah, so if I had to paint a picture for the playoffs right now in the NFC, because it's a little bit easier than the AFC, I would put, this is just going off of what I think. Detroit, Green Bay, Philly, San Francisco, Tampa Bay. All right, I'm just going to go for a division thing. Detroit, Tampa, Philly, San Francisco. Green Bay, I'm still going to go Dallas because... And then I think you get a mix of Atlanta, LA, Seattle. I'll even throw the Saints in there competing for that spots 6 and 7. You know, I think there's about 4 or 5 teams going for 2 playoff spots.
I got you there. The way I'll have it going is I'm actually going to predict the Lions to be number 1.
Oh, I was just doing it in no particular order. I was just going like north, south, east, west.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that's I'm going to throw that caveat in there on mine. The Lions getting that number 1 seed, the 49ers getting the 2nd seed. It's going to be a really close race between those two teams, I think. They're both in pretty competitive divisions too, which makes it harder for them. Then I'll have the Eagles at 3.
Yep.
And then at 4 will be the Falcons. As far as my wild card teams, I'll have the Packers just right in there at 5. And then I will say the Rams at 6. And then at 7, I will say will be the Cowboys. And just for shits and giggles, Co-pilot has the 49ers getting 1st, the Lions getting 2nd, the Eagles getting 3rd, the Falcons getting 4th, the Commanders getting a wild card spot, Green Bay Packers, and Seattle Seahawks.
It's like I was saying earlier, I think Seattle will be in that mix where they'll finish like 7, 8, or 9, you know, where it's like get in, or they'll just squeak in, or they'll just miss out. Like that's the thing this year. There's a lot of that, like that in the hunt for the NFC is always interesting. It's interesting in the AFC too, but the AFC, like I feel like we know the teams that are probably going to be in that mix. You know, you're probably going to have the team who wins the North. You'll have like the South. You'll have like Baltimore, Cincinnati in the mix. You'll have Buffalo, Miami, New York, Kansas City. That's 7 teams right there.
Mm-hmm.
Plus Plus, the Chargers could be in the mix. The Broncos could be in the mix. Cleveland, you don't know. Indianapolis, you don't know. So we're truly in for an NFL season where it's unpredictable and we don't know what's going to happen. But before we go, I want to ask you a question. Obviously, we've had a back-to-back champion in the NFL for the first time in almost 20 years. Do you think? I don't want to ask you if what you think the odds are of it. Do you think a three-peat is possible for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I would say anything is possible as long as Mahomes is on that football field. As long as you have Mahomes on that football field, I would say it's possible. And as long as Kelsey can maintain, their big thing is going to be
Father time.
finding that second guy to be that guy. Rashee Rice showed promise last season, but he seems like a bonehead making stupid decisions out there in the offseason. So that's probably why they went out and drafted Xavier Worthy, which I just took him in a dynasty league because I was able to draft Mahomes in the dynasty league. So I'm kind of hoping low key that Xavier Worthy becomes that guy and the Mahomes Worthy connection becomes something that people talk about for years and years to come. But we'll see how it goes with Mr. Swift and Mahomes. We'll see how everything goes there. But I do think it's possible for them to three-peat. Because, like I said, anything's possible as long as you have that dude on the football field.
My only thing with it is just it's never been done before, so I'm just like want to wait and see if they can actually do it. So until then, I'm gonna bet against it because I think the difference between last year and this year is with last year it's kind of this, last year was always like they were doubting them, but then they just kept winning. But if this year, if the same thing sort of happens to Kansas City, and they make the playoffs, but everyone's like, oh, they have their doubts, but everyone's gonna be like, oh, they're just gonna do it again. I just think that with them, they're always gonna win in those seasons where you truly don't think they can do it, and the seasons when you think they're gonna run the table and get there is when you think they'll win. It's when when you the main one though I want to look at that one is 2 years ago when they lost Tyreek Hill. The AFC West was going to be stacked. The four teams in the AFC West were going to make the playoffs. Remember, and then Denver fizzled out. Vegas wasn't good, and the Chargers made the playoffs, but then they shit the bed. So we'll wait and see. But at the end of the day, like you said, my 15's under center. Anything is possible.
Yep, that's true. And I definitely think they'll make a strong push, and it's possible. Like I said, it's probably smart to bet against it just because it's nothing that's ever been done before. And beating the odds of something like that is hard to do. But anything's possible with Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes, and Chris Jones.
1,000%. But folks, AFC done. NFC done. Co-pilot, you were fantastic tonight. But tomorrow, Sophie McGarvin and I will be here because we have to preview a bad football team. See you guys then. This has been episode 307. Matt Peace. It's a pleasure as always, Matt. That too. Guys, enjoy your night. Episode 307 in the bag. Have a good one, everyone.